Chapter 8. The Vermicious Nids. "Oh my goodness me," gasped Mr. Wonka. "Oh my sainted pants! Oh my painted ants! Oh my crawling cats! I hope never to see anything like that again." He floated over to the white button and pressed it. The booster rockets fired. The elevator shot forward at such a speed that soon the Space Hotel was out of sight and far behind. "But who were those awful creatures?" Charlie asked. "You mean you didn't know?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Well, it's a good thing you didn't. If you'd had even the faintest idea of what horrors you were up against, the marrow would have run out of your bones. You'd have been fossilized with fear and glued to the ground. Then they'd have got you. You'd have been a cooked cucumber. You'd have been rasped into 1,000 tiny bits, grated like cheese and flocculated alive. They'd have made necklaces from your knuckle bones and bracelets from your teeth. Because those creatures, my dear ignorant boy, are the most brutal, vindictive, venomous, murderous beasts in the entire universe." Here Mr. Wonka paused and ran the tip of a pink tongue all the way round his lips. "Vermicious Nids," he cried. "That's what they were." He sounded the K, Knids, like that. "I thought they were grobes," Charlie said. "Those oozy-woozy grobes you were telling the President about." "Oh no, I just made those up to scare the White House," Mr. Wonka answered. "But there's nothing made up about Vermicious Nids or Knids. Believe you me, they live, as everybody knows, on the planet Verms, which is 18,427 million miles away, and they are very, very, very clever brutes indeed. The Vermicious Nid can turn itself into any shape it wants. It has no bones. Its body is really one huge muscle, enormously strong, but very stretchy and squishy, like a mixture of rubber and putty with steel wires inside. Normally it is egg-shaped, but it can just as easily give itself 2 legs like a human or 4 legs like a horse. It can become as round as a ball or as long as a kite string. From 50 yards away, a fully grown Vermicious Nid could stretch out its neck and bite your head off without even getting up." "Bite off your head with what?" said Grandma Georgina. "I didn't see any mouth." "They have other things to bite with," said Mr. Wonka darkly. "Such as what?" said Grandma Georgina. "Ring off," said Mr. Wonka. "Your time's up. But listen, everybody, I've just had a funny thought. There I was fooling around with the President and pretending we were creatures from some other planet, and by golly, there actually were creatures from some other planet on board." "Do you think there were many?" Charlie asked. "More than the 5 we saw?" "Thousands," said Mr. Wonka. "There are 500 rooms in that Space Hotel, and there's probably a family of them in every room." "Somebody's going to get a nasty shock when they go on board," said Grandpa Joe. "They'll be eaten like peanuts," said Mr. Wonka. "Every one of them." "You don't really mean that, do you, Mr. Wonka?" Charlie said. "Of course I mean it," said Mr. Wonka. "These Vermicious Knids are the terror of the universe. They travel through space in great swarms, landing on other stars and planets and destroying everything they find. There used to be some rather nice creatures living on the moon a long time ago. They were called Poozas. But Vermicious Knids ate the lot. They did the same on Venus and Mars and many other planets." "Why haven't they come down to Earth and eaten us?" Charlie asked. "They've tried to, Charlie, many times, but they've never made it. You see, all around our Earth there is a vast envelope of air and gas, and anything hitting that at high speed gets red hot. Space capsules are made of special heat-proof metal, and when they make a re-entry, their speeds are reduced right down to about 2,000 miles an hour, first by retro rockets and then by something called friction. But even so, they get badly scorched. Knids, which are not heat-proof at all and don't have any retro rockets, get sizzled up completely before they're halfway through. Have you ever seen a shooting star?" "Lots of them," Charlie said. "Actually, they're not shooting stars at all," said Mr. Wonka. "They're shooting Knids." They're Cnids trying to enter the Earth's atmosphere at high speed and going up in flames." "What rubbish," said Grandma Georgina. "You wait," said Mr. Wonka. "You may see it happening before the day is done." "But if they're so fierce and dangerous," Charlie said, "why didn't they eat us up right away in the space hotel? Why did they waste time twisting their bodies into letters and writing scram?" "Because they're show-offs," Mr. Wonka replied. "They're tremendously proud of being able to write like that. But why say scram when they wanted to catch us and eat us?" "It's the only word they know," Mr. Wonka said. "Look," screamed Grandma Josephine, pointing through the glass. "Over there." But before he even looked, Charlie knew exactly what he was going to see, and so did the others. They could tell by the high, hysterical note in the old lady's voice. And there it was, cruising effortlessly alongside them, a simply colossal, vermeicious Cnid, as thick as a whale, as long as a lorry, with the most brutal, vermeicious look in its eyes. It was no more than a dozen yards away, egg-shaped, slimy, greenish-brown, with one malevolent red eye, the only one visible, fixed intently upon the people floating inside the great glass elevator. "The end has come," screamed Grandma Georgina. "He'll eat us up," cried Mrs. Bucket. "In one gulp," said Mr. Bucket. "We're done for, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe. Charlie nodded. He couldn't speak or make a sound. His throat was seized with fright. But this time Mr. Wonka didn't panic. He remained perfectly calm. "We'll soon get rid of that," he said, and pressed 6 buttons all at once, and 6 booster rockets went off simultaneously under the elevator. The elevator leaped forward like a stung horse, faster and faster, but the great green greasy Cnid kept pace alongside it with no trouble at all. "Make it go away," yelled Grandma Georgina. "I can't stand it looking at me." "Dear lady," said Mr. Wonka, "it can't possibly get in here. I don't mind admitting I was a trifle alarmed back there in the space hotel, and with good reason. But here we have nothing to fear. The great glass elevator is shock-proof, waterproof, bomb-proof, bulletproof, and Cnid-proof. So just relax and enjoy it." "Oh, you Cnid, you are vile and vermeicious," cried Mr. Wonka. "You are slimy and soggy and squishous. But what do we care? 'Cause you can't get in here, so hop it and don't get ambitious." At this point, the massive Cnid outside turned and started cruising away from the elevator. "There you are," cried Mr. Wonka, triumphant. "It heard me. It's going home." But Mr. Wonka was wrong. When the creature was about 100 yards off, it stopped, hovered for a moment, and then went smoothly into reverse, coming back toward the elevator with its rear end, which was the pointed end of the egg, now in front. Even going backwards, its acceleration was unbelievable. It was like some monstrous bullet coming at them, and it came so fast nobody even had time to cry out. Crash! It struck the glass elevator with the most enormous bang, and the whole thing shivered and shook, but the glass held, and the Cnid bounced off like a rubber ball. "What did I tell you?" shouted Mr. Wonka, triumphant. "We're safe as a sausage in here." "He'll have a nasty headache after that," said Grandpa Joe. "It's not his head, it's his bottom," said Charlie. "Look, there's a big bump coming up on the pointed end where he hit. It's going black and blue." And so it was. A purple, bruisey bump the size of a small car was appearing on the pointed rear end of the giant Cnid. "Hello, you dirty great beast," cried Mr. Wonka. Here's a picture of it. Going at the spaceship. Going towards the elevator. "Hello, you great Cnid. Tell us how you do. You're a rather strange colour today. Your bottom is purple and lavender blue. Should it really be looking that way? Are you feeling well? Are you going to faint? Is it something we cannot discuss? It must be a very unpleasant complaint, for your backside's as big as a bus. Let me get you to a doctor. I know just the man. For a Cnid with a nasty disease, he's a butcher by trade, which is not a bad plan, and he charges quite reasonable fees. And here he is now. Doc, you really are kind to travel so far into space. There's your patient, the Cnid with the purple behind. Do you think it's a desperate case?" "Great heavens above, it's no wonder he's pale," said the doc with a horrible grin. "There's a sort of balloon on the end of his tail. I must prick it at once with a pin." So he got out a thing like an Indian spear with feathers all over the top, and he lunged and he caught the Kinid smack in the rear, but alas, the balloon didn't pop. Cried the Kinid, what on earth am I going to do with this painful, preposterous lump? I can't remain standing the whole summer through, and I cannot sit down on my rump. It's a bad case of rear ache, the medico said, and it's something I cannot repair. If you want to sit down, you must sit on your head, with your bottom high up in the air.